Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host, and if this is your first Geekscape, strap yourselves in for some pop culture talk. Movies, video games, comic books, TV, all of that great pop culture stuff that you can fit under your hood right here. I'm wearing a hat, but, you know, if I was to lift up my brain, lift up my skull, there's a lot of pop culture junk in there. And every week, I like to sit down with you guys and share it with you, usually with a guest. How much fun was that last episode with Tony Fleece and Tone Rodriguez? They are creators on that brand new book, Feral, from Image Comics. I'm telling you, it's Homeward Bound meets like a Romero movie with these cats navigating the wild when there's a viral outbreak. And if you guys, I've actually heard from a lot of you guys that you went out there and you picked up a copy of Feral. Issue 1 should totally still be out there. It's a great comic. And it is not a miniseries. It is a long-running comic. It is an ongoing. So you want to get on the ground floor. You don't want to have to wait for trades on this one. Because if you're impatient like I am, you got to read those things every month. But Feral's great, and awesome feedback from you guys on how much you guys went out there and got the comic, enjoyed it, and all that. Sorry for skipping an actual Geekscape in between. It was Heidi's birthday. It was a pretty busy week. My parents came into town. My younger brother Paul's birthday was yesterday. It has been nonstop here at Geekscape headquarters. And on top of that, we got to talk about comic book conventions. I've got Drew Seldin here on the show. Josh Jackson of Dynamic Resolutions is joining us. But Drew is the co-owner and co-founder of Comic Con Revolution. Comic Con Revolution, for those of you in Southern California, they have another chapter, but up in May, we're going to be going to Comic Con Revolution in Ontario, here in California. And Ontario is like, it's I would say that it's like an inland empire, but not so far away from Los Angeles that people from Los Angeles don't go. I've never been, but I'll tell you what, Christian Blatt from Marvel Movie Talk here on the Geekscape Network, he loves it. And he's been telling me for at least the last 2 years, you got to go to Comic Con Revolution. It is the best kept secret in comic conventions in Southern California. And so I made a point. To get us press passes. I made a point to reach out to Drew and say, hey, come on the podcast. Let's talk about Comic Con Revolution. And you know what? It's not going to be a secret for long if it still is, because they've got some pretty awesome guests coming this year. People like the voice cast of X-Men 97. Let's just stop there. That's the hottest show on television. Freddie Prinze Jr. and Rachel Lee Cook. Maybe they'll have a Josh knows the movie, but and Matt Kelly's screaming at me right now. But maybe they'll have a little bit of a reunion. Is it She's All That? Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor. When you go to Combo Creators, if you're into wrestling, they've got Samoa Joe. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I loved Heir to the Empire in middle school. Like those Heir to the Empire books were perfect for me in middle school, and Timothy Zahn wrote them, and he's going to be at Comic Con Revolution in May. So it's an awesome show. We are going to talk to Drew right after the credits here, the beginning of the show, and we'll come back and maybe we'll talk some more movies, video games, reviews, all that stuff that you guys come to Geekscape for. We're not going to disappoint. So let's get the show started. All right, Geekscapists, it's time for me to start the show. Drew Seldin, the co-owner and co-founder of Comic Con Revolution. They've got two conventions. One of them is coming to sunny Southern California here in mid-May to Ontario. And you know what? I almost went to Ontario this past weekend. My parents were flying in from Vegas. They don't live in Vegas. They were in Vegas for an event. And they came to visit me for about 48 hours. But I went to pick them up at Burbank Airport. And California isn't like a desert anymore. It is we've had more. We're not in a drought. It's just been flooding like crazy, and it's been raining like crazy. And I'm sitting there waiting at Burbank Airport to pick my parents up on Saturday, and it says the plane landed. The plane didn't land. The plane, it was so stormy outside, and I'm getting rained on, that the plane didn't land. It got 3 miles within the, it got 3 miles to the runway, and it turned right back around and went back to Vegas, because the pilots and everybody were like, nope. I'm just glad they didn't fly in from Phoenix, because that flight got rerouted to Ontario, which has a small airport out there near Los Angeles. And I would have had to go to Ontario to pick my parents up. And you know, at that point, it's like, I'll see you guys in a couple months. No, you guys enjoy Ontario. I'm not driving out there, but I will go. This is going to be terrible when they hear this. I will go out there for Comic-Con Revolution. You know, if I can go get Timothy Zahn's autograph, going to pick my parents up at the airport, I'm there. You know, if I can shake hands with Samoa Joe and Freddie Prinze Jr., I'm there. If I can meet the voice cast of the X-Men 97 show, I'm there. But picking people up in a rainstorm, no. Well, let's talk about Comic-Con Revolution. I've got Drew here, and Josh Jackson, who's joining us from Dynamic Resolutions. Drew, I'm just going to say the obvious, because we just went to WonderCon in Anaheim. We're good friends with Los Angeles Comic-Con here at the Convention Center in Los Angeles. What's up with Ontario? What's up with Ontario, man?
Dude, Ontario's the spot. It's the hidden gem. It's the oasis in the wasteland. I mean, it's definitely going to be the spot to become May 18th and 19th this year. We actually discovered, well, not like Columbus discovered, but like for Comic-Cons, we discovered Ontario, and the Inland Empire itself is this unbelievable region, group of people. There's like 12 million of them out there. And when they heard that they were going to get their own Comic-Con, they opened their arms like this and they said, come on. And the city embraced us like you can't believe.
It's amazing, because the Inland Empire Geekscape goes from just the eastern part of Los Angeles County all the way to like Arizona, and it goes all the way south to San Diego County. It hugs up against like Orange County, so there's a little geography for you Geekscape. The Inland Empire is massive, and I think it's super smart that you guys put a convention there. And again, like, it's not too far from LA. I was joking and being silly in the intro, but it's not too far from LA at all. It's what, an hour away at max?
Yeah, I mean, it's an hour. I usually tell people it's about 50 minutes east of Los Angeles.
And I drove that much for WonderCon. I drove that much to Anaheim for WonderCon.
And it's the same drive, you know. Listen, obviously, when you're driving anywhere, if you hit the dreaded traffic, you're doomed regardless. But distance-wise, it's not that bad. It's an easy drive, and it's worth the trip. I mean, it's a great area, and obviously, with what we've got going on this year, it's definitely going to be the spot to be. And if you're a fan of Star Wars or wrestling, or you know, you're enjoying X-Men, or you're into books and you want to collect or you want to cosplay, it's just going to be the spot.
I think we have a couple of those around here. Maybe some Star Wars fans. Maybe there's some wrestling fans around here somewhere. Josh Jackson here and I met because he's a wrestling fan. And Josh, how did that conversation go when you were working at GameStop and I went in there to buy some video games? Do you remember how we met, Josh? You were working GameStop.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, Day of Reckoning 2 on GameCube was coming out, that old WWE game. And you dropped in or picking up some stuff, and then you pointed out the advertisement, or you're like, oh yeah, my brother's in that game. And I was like, oh really? And it was like a cool coincidence, because my wife Megan's favorite wrestler was Paul. So
whoa, hold on now. Like, Paul London was? Is he not your
very much is. Actually, she went to go visit her family, and they were digging through their old wrestling toys, and they dug this up. I don't know if you could see it on the camera.
Dude, it's my brother Paul.
So she brought up that he is her favorite wrestler, so they let her keep it. So she brought that home about a week or so ago.
That's amazing. Don't turn it into a voodoo doll. Like, I just saw Paul. It was his birthday. We saw each other yesterday, the day before. Please be kind to that doll. Don't curse it in any way. I've got a couple of those.
If he started acting erratic at all during his party, that's probably why.
When is he not acting erratic? The two of us getting together, like, I don't think we're allowed to come home for the holidays at the same time, because the two of us just start bouncing off of each other like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and it's bad. It's like, it's not good. But happy birthday, Paul, if you're out there. And we got some cool stuff to announce with Paul very soon. I think Drew's seen some of the artwork for an upcoming project with my brother.
Yes.
And it's so much fun. But yeah, no, Paul's been wrestling a lot recently, and he runs a school here in Southgate, which is kind of cool. He's training luchadors and wrestlers and all this stuff. Drew, how long have you been doing this Comic-Con Revolution? In Ontario's not the only spot, is it?
Well, at the moment it is. Prior to the pandemic, we were in Chicago, we were in West Palm Beach. We had to reassess and rejigger and change things up to kind of bring the company back and keep it all alive after everything that happened. So we're focusing on Ontario. It's would have been the longest running of the shows, and it's kind of we're calling, it's our flagship. So once it's fully back up and where it should be, then we're going to expand again.
How many years is that?
So this is going to be year 7. The first one was in 2017. That was a one-day show. We rolled the dice to see what would happen, and like I said, the Inland Empire just said, "You got to keep doing this." So
that's awesome, because I remember when LA Comic Con started as Kamikaze and being part of that, and seeing it go from. Josh, were you there that first year that we were being media sponsors for LA Comic Con when they were Kamikaze, and it was like, and they were in really one of the LA Convention Center's parking garages. There were those giant pillars for the parking garage, and they had, of course, set it up with a small stage and some booths. We had a booth, and I walked in, and it was so full and colorful that it wasn't until like 2-3 years later, going back once it moved out of that space, and they're in like the proper halls, that I park in what was the old convention. And I was like, wait, I'm in the parking lot. This is where the convention was for the first year, second year. This is awesome to see the growth. And I'm excited to see it because, again, Christian Blatt, he interviewed Chris Claremont at Comic-Con Revolution one year or something like that. Or he was out there interviewing crazy Marvel Legend creators. And he'd come back to the network and be like, "Oh, I got this podcast recording at Comic-Con Revolution. It's with blank." And my head would spin, and I'd be like, "Wait, who did you just interview? And where did you find them?" Comic-Con Revolution. That's pretty awesome, dude. What's the process of making a convention? I'm scared too. I don't think I don't have it in me to try that. And people have asked about that. We sponsored some zombie conventions in Seattle back in 2001, 2002, when like Walking Dead was really, really hot. It's still hot, but that was a lot of fun. But I don't think sponsoring it was fine, but I don't know about putting it on. Like, where'd that come from, Drew?
My partners, Mike Sigliano and James Ross and myself, we've all been in and around the industry for years. And it was always a matter of working on other people's shows and doing what they wanted. And really the discussion became, what I would have done if this was our show? You know what I would have done? You know who I would have had? And finally, after you say that enough, if you really mean it, someone says, "You know what? We should do our own show." And while you're sitting there after the 4th beer, you're like, "Yeah, dude, we should totally do that." And then you wake up the next day and say, "Oh my God, did we really agree to do that?" And in the end, it's because we love it. It's a year-long process to plan a show. We're kind of wrapped up on 2024, and we're starting to look ahead to 2025.
Mm-hmm.
When you're first starting, it's a matter of finding a weekend. So you got to find a weekend where you're not up against a zillion other shows and a gigantic show.
In Chicago, that's
also
hard. Like, when you guys are in Chicago, you got C2E2, you got a lot of big Chicago attractions, like competing in.
It was tough, but Chicago is an area that loves their events. It's in a weird way, because it's so big, they can handle all that. They really can, and they love it. And once if you could find a location and you can find a weekend where you're not up against someone else, you're not bumping into other shows, that's a big hurdle to get over. And then once you do, it's really, who do people want to meet? Who do I want to meet? Who does Mike want to meet? Who does James want to meet? And being geeks, loving the culture, loving the industry, loving gaming, loving comics, loving TV, loving movies, you start to build a guest list. And, then it's the nitty gritty, the logistics, and everyone's like, "Oh, dude, what a great gig." I'm like, yeah, in theory, that weekend, it's amazing. Leading up to it, it's a lot of work and it's a job. No one knows about the spreadsheets and the P&Ls and building the budgets and all that stuff. That's not fun. But booking the cast of Star Wars Rebels, the cast of Clone Wars, the AEW champ, Samoa Joe, the X-Men, 97, saying, oh my God, we're going to be sitting down with Adam Kubert, or any of these other people who are coming. It's like, then okay, now we're doing something cool.
And Drew, growing up, I'm guessing you grew up there in Jersey, like Asbury Park area and stuff like that. Like, I mean, that you're right there near. I mean, the people who've come from your neighborhood, like Kevin Smith's just up the street, and right.
Oh, I actually lived in Red Bank for 18 years, so
wow,
really right up the street from Kevin Smith.
Yeah,
and good.
No, I was just gonna say, like, what was your fandom growing up? Was it comics? Was it movies? Was it video games? Like, what was your talk about that little fire that you had that you've now turned into a full inferno doing this now. You're in it now. And like, it's two questions. It's like, what was that fandom? And then when you started to sit with your partners and think about this convention, who were the people that you were like, I want to get that person? And did it happen, or did it happen in the subsequent years? Or is there still a white whale out there that you would love to come? If you can talk about that, you can come.
Absolutely. I mean, in the end, where did it begin? So it kind of, my love of superheroes began as a very, very, very little boy. This is a common story. It's been told before. If I need to get my dad on the phone right now to prove it, I will. My first word was Batman.
Whoa!
It was not mom. It was not dad. It was not hi. It was not bye. My cradle was in my parents' bedroom. Every day at 4:00 or whenever it was on, my brother watched the Adam West Batman show.
Yeah.
So for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, every day I heard the concentrated. I'm
aging you now because Geekscape. When that stuff was like heavy in rotation, it was 1989 when they had the Prince song playing and they had the Tim Burton stuff. Do you remember like those months going into like the Tim Burton Batman 89?
It was insane.
That was all they could play.
And that was on syndication, like nonstop.
Right,
watching those Adam West. But this is different.
I'm way before that. So
okay, I was trying.
My brother and my father are playing one point, and he's doing the song, and all of a sudden, I just let it rip. Batman. My parents lost it. They were like, "Oh my God, he spoke!" And then they were like,
"You're not our son. Put him in the cave. We have to train him." They called the League of Assassins.
So that's where that started. But really, I guess when I was 6. My dad took me to see this movie called Star Wars. It had come out, maybe I was 7, whatever it was. And he'll tell the story again. Those orangish yellow letters blasted onto the screen. He said, I stood up on my chair and I watched the entire movie standing up. I didn't blink. I didn't move. So, it's been ingrained. I've always loved it. I've always been a fan. I never saw it as a job. I never saw it as an opportunity to have a business, whatever. But it really, for me, it started at that young age. And it's been an evolution and just a love for it. It evolved into movies and shows and, gaming. I was part of a company. We did prop replicas and stuff like that and digital design assets. So really the love of gaming evolved in the early to mid 2000s and a little bit beyond that. And then, like I said, when it was looking for something else, Mike James and I sat down and really it led to this. And, the guests that we've had, like last year, we did something really special. We had the Avatar: The Last Airbender cast, and that was the first time they had been together for something. So fans really loved the idea of having that whole cast there, which is why we did what we did this year with Rebels and with Clone Wars. There's a million white whales, so to say. There really isn't just one, and we kick around the ideas a lot, and whether it's a wrestler and whether it's someone who's popular now or someone who's in the the WWE Hall of Fame. Like I said, there's so many icons in that. And again, with actors and all the stuff that's gone on recently with the Marvel movies and the DC stuff and all the shows that are popping up on the streamings, whether it's the Fallouts or the Halos or The Last of Us. Like I said, there's just so many things to pull from. I mean, who would be incredible to have in the near future? would Pedro Pascal not be insane?
Let's call him. Let's see if we can
Yeah,
call
get him
him.
on the horn and see what he's doing. But
He
like,
plays poker with my friend Chuck used to play poker with him. I don't know if they still do, but he says he's incredible. He says he's such an amazing
I'm
guy.
sure, you know, and the great thing about when people come to shows, you know, most of them, 90% of them, they really want to be there. They really want to sit with fans. They do want to hear the stories.
No, I'm going to ask
You know,
who doesn't want to be be there.
they're not coming now. They're not coming.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just, you know, to be a fan, and whether it's sci-fi or comics or, you know, the Yankees or hockey or women's basketball, whatever it may be, when you can sit down with the people who do what you love and show your appreciation. And I don't mean just gush and, you know, necessarily goober on them like, you know, a full-on fanboy, but the discussions of telling them what you do means so much to me. They appreciate it. I mean, how can you not? How can you not sit back and say to yourself, wow, like I met this person and what they told me about what my work means to them, whether it was a book they read when they were little and going through a tough time. You know, like I said, how can you not love that? How can you not just appreciate someone coming to you with that? So, and that's a big part of why putting on a show and getting the right guests is important, because our fan base really does have a deep devotion and you know, almost an ownership of things. And sometimes it gets toxic, obviously,
Sure.
But you know, a deep love of it and ownership of the things that they see and they really fall for.
When did you? What are your top? I mean, because we're gonna make some new awesome moments this year.
Sure.
Looking back at the 7 years you've been in Southern California, or maybe throw in some Florida and some Chicago if you'd like,
Sure.
but where you're just like, wow, this was one of the coolest moments ever, and I was a part of making it happen.
So obviously the Avatar thing last year was really
That's
something
pretty
special
awesome
for the fans. Yeah, but personally, and this is probably a totally selfish personal highlight, but it was one of our West Palm shows. We had the vehicle replicas there, and it was an '89 Burton Batmobile there, and
That's
I
so cool.
kept going over and over with the guy. I'm like, dude, come on, you got to give me the keys. 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 And finally, he's like, dude, I'm not giving you the keys, but I'm like, He goes, let's go. And we went for a ride.
Oh, wow.
What?
I wouldn't even think that was like that. It was functional. That's crazy.
Oh no, it's fully functional, and he had the propane tank, so the flame shot out the back. Like, it's a whole thing.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And
Palm Beach has no rolls. Like that's crazy.
Well, I mean, who's going to stop us from the Batmobile? I'm like, hey, we got it.
Is that where Terry Hogan's running around his Thunder in Paradise? Is there in Florida? Like he's doing that whole thing with the speedboats, that Hulkster. That's it. That place is
there now.
Yeah, that place is absolutely GTA Vice City.
It's the spot, man. So like I said, that was in. You ask about a moment over the last 7 years, and that was really something. I also got to host a panel, which it was me and Billy West.
That's awesome.
And
doing all the voices and everything.
And I even said to everybody who was in the audience, I was like, listen, I don't really care what you people are doing here. I'm going to sit down with Billy West for an hour. I'm going to ask him all the stuff I want to know. If you guys are into it, cool. If not, leave. You know, so these were moments for me. And, you know, I mean, Billy's just, you know, what Ren and Stimpy, I mean, the Futurama stuff. Like, I mean, what hasn't Billy done? So, like I said, to be able to do stuff like that, it's just, there's just incredible moments. And, you know, like I said, things like that, they just stay with you. And it really, you know, it's why coming, me personally, to the Comic-Con Revolution every year and every show is just, you know, off the charts. So.
In Geekscape, it is May 18th and 19th there in Ontario at the Ontario Convention Center. And I had finally had enough of Christian Blatt in his talking about the convention. And I was like, fine. I'm going to go. Fine. And I did the research. And when I went to the website, I'm going to pull the website up here real quick. I'm going to share this with you. I go to this website, right? ComicConRevolution.com. And the first thing I do is I go, let me see who he's got coming. And I click on the guests, and immediately I start seeing X-Men 97 actors. D. Bradley Baker from, like you said, like Avatar and all the Star Wars animateds. and stuff. And I just start going down. And our friend Sandy King Carpenter, who's one of my favorite Geekscape guests of all time,
she's unbelievable.
She's amazing. And
such a great person.
Speaking of Kevin Smith, Ming Chen, you guys remember him from his comic, the comic shop there in Asbury, in New Jersey, and he is on that show in Red Bank. Yeah,
Ming hosts our cosplay contest every year, and he's phenomenal.
That's great. And then you got the wrestlers. You got Amy Dumas. Obviously, you've got who'd you have? Samoa Joe.
Right, AEW champ.
I've had enough of the wrestling, and I mean, Josh knows this. When it's in your family, it's like enough with the wrestling. But my wife and I started watching that Twisted Metal, and because we're looking for something to watch, she gets frustrated because I never want to watch things when she wants to watch things. I'm always trying to write or do other things, and she finally has me sitting down. And the Fallout hasn't started yet. What else did we watch? We watched Shogun. That hasn't started yet. And I have this what's it on Peacock? And she's like, "Is there anything else on Peacock?" And I go, "All right." So Derek Cranevelt, who's also a Geekscape podcaster, he watched this show called Twisted Metal. It's based on a video game. I don't know how loyal it's going to be. I don't see how it could be faithful to the game because it's just demolition derby with machine guns. But I heard it's fun. We watched that episode, and we watched that first episode. We loved it, and then we binged the freaking thing over the course of like 2 weeks. And then I find out in our little text exchange that Samoa Joe is Sweet Tooth, and I was like, that makes so much sense. I met Samoa Joe backstage at ECW back in like, I want to say 2002, 2003 when Paul was doing something like that. But with Geekscape, he's got Greg Land, who's an amazing artist there for tons of the Kubert, like Adam Kubert. That's ridiculous. Adrian Palicki, I want her to be like, bring back Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was Mockingbird and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Jimmy Palmiotti.
She was great.
There's some really great guest Geekscapists. Go to this website right here, comicconrevolution.com. Go to the Ontario page and just start looking at some of these guests. They're pretty great, and I'm excited to be there, man. I really do appreciate you inviting us to be a part of that because it just looks great. And I haven't even looked at I haven't even looked at the panels yet. There's some cosplay competition, of course, but what other programming you think we got there?
Well, we've been announcing it slowly on social media, but we did just Sunday morning is going to be your X-Men 97 panel. Sunday afternoon, I believe, is the Rebels panel. Saturday is the Clone Wars panel. There's obviously going to be, sit downs on their own. John DiMaggio's coming, so he's got to do his own thing. Adam's going to be doing panels. There's going to obviously be stuff related to cosplay for people who want to learn, for people who want to create. We have our adult costume cosplay contest. We also have a kids one, so they're not kind of judged together, and that's always a blast.
It's grown-ups Geekscape. It's not PG. It's PG. It's grown-ups, right?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, they're not wearing much sometimes, but
no.
Whatever you want.
Actually, funny enough, we try and keep it pretty family friendly.
Okay. Because
we do kids. No, we do kids 12 and under free with an adult ticket. So, like I said, we really want to make it a family event, and the paneling it's a big part of a show. And when we do our programming, we really want to touch all the bases. So yeah, like I said, you've got your monster panels. We're going to have a big wrestling panel with Trish and Lita and Joe, all talking obviously about what they can and careers and retrospectives and things like that. I always say that if you've never been to a con and you think, I'm not into comics, so I'm not going to go to one, or I'm not into wrestling, so I'm not going to go in. I mean, there's so much to do at a con. There really is. And walking the show floor, yes, the exhibits, you're going to buy some stuff, you're going to look at some stuff, you're going to reminisce about a toy you used to have or whatever. Then you're going to be like, well, what else? Well, then there's this whole other area called Artist Alley, which is just these guys who create stuff.
It's my favorite part of any convention.
Right. And it's unbelievable. And we used to have it on the floor. And a couple of years ago, it got so big, we had to move it into the big ballroom. Wow. And everyone was a little bit freaked out initially, but we have all the big comic talent in there. So it's a whole nother area to gravitate.
It's a clubhouse.
Yes.
New York Comic Con has
you don't even need the secret knock. You're just allowed in.
New York Comic Con's Artist Alley is in a different building, like down a hallway. And I think it's for the better because you get those guys just jamming together and you go in there and it's almost like you walk behind the curtain to their creative community and you get to hang out with them. You just got me super stoked because when I went down to WonderCon 2 or 3 weeks ago, I almost exclusively hung out in Artist Alley. I ran around. I did the interviews like I'm going to be doing Geekscapists. Right. Geekscapists who aren't in Southern California. I can't get to Southern California. I'm going to be bringing you some Comic-Con Revolution right here on the podcast feed, on the audio feed. So subscribe to the audio feed. I'll be running around doing those interviews, but I was doing so many of them at WonderCon just in the day that I went. It's all Artist Alley, guys. Like, I love comics, but we got some actors in there. We got all sorts of people in there, and I'm stoked for this, man. I'm super excited. You got this X-Men 97 stuff. I've been posting these memes to the Geekscape group on Facebook, and they've gone nuts. People are hungry for this X-Men 97 show. Are you watching this thing, Drew? Because
it's so good.
Absolutely. And the wild now, Josh, I'm sorry. You look like you might have been born after 97. You have a little bit of a young look to you. So
I just sell it well. I'm actually 10 years prior to that.
But we were watching the show. I mean, this was my first introduction to the X-Men, this cartoon, and this style and these characters, and the fact that I'm looking at it and the drawings are, the art is basically the same. The only thing that kills me a little bit is the Wolverine voice when he says "bub," because it's not exactly what I remember it. Yeah, that's on me. But it's great, and obviously they're trying to make like it's set in 97. And the themes that they're touching on are very relevant to today.
Super contemporary. From like the January 6th insurrection was in like episode 3. Right. And then Geekscape is like the showrunner who's no longer the showrunner. And I mean, there's 2 seasons in the can already. This is the first one. The showrunner was talking after, and I don't want to spoil that episode. That was 2 episodes ago, last week's episode. But it's pretty heavy. And I'm not going to tell you what happens to a specific character, but the destruction in Genosha happened in the Grant Morrison run, and I remember buying that when I was in undergrad, and people started talking on the internet like, oh man, the classic Morrison run, and I was like, classic? It just came out last year. Oh my god, I'm so old. And then you get the showrunner, and the showrunner is talking about it as like a 9/11 type metaphor, but it hit so hard, that episode from last week, and every episode they did Limbo, they did Inferno. I mean, they did Inferno, and they're doing this stuff at a clip that is just awesome. The artwork's beefed up, the music's beefed up. This is such a well-written show, and it's got the highest Metacritic score, or is it Rotten Tomatoes, whatever, of any Marvel Disney release. And
it's not surprising though. If you watch it, it's just unreal. And like I said, to be sitting there and again seeing events like these kind of things, in going back even a previous episode, in episode 2, Magneto's on trial at the UN, and
the speech, the writing, that shit was awesome.
Just unbelievable. You're like, what am I watching here?
That's one of the benefits too of streaming, because it's like,
yes, you have to wait.
Like a lot of these themes, they like kind of snuck them in on the old show and did what they could within the parameters of like network TV. But I feel like
Fox,
but with now it being on a streaming service, they're able to take it so much farther. They're able to just be a lot more direct with what's going on, how they're being oppressed, how they're being hurt. And that Genosha episode, that could have never flown on Fox 11 back in like
impossible.
96.
It was gut-wrenching.
Yeah, that's one of the really great things, that they're really taking full advantage of the platform that it's on now and being able to tell stories that they might not have been able to tell the same way back then.
And it's not even just this, and like Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 episodes of that, I'm like, what am I watching here? I'm looking at a cartoon and I'm thinking, oh, there's D. Bradley Baker. We're going to be hanging in a couple of weeks. And I'm watching this thing and I'm like, oh my God, look where they're taking this. And again, who in a million years, what could think that these animated series are delving into topics like this? And it's remarkable. They have such a medium and such a platform. And I think the fan bases are just eating it up, which is why this show is so popular right now.
And they're running circles around. No offense to the live action content, but people have argued that since the Infinity Saga, the big screen, maybe some of the stuff on Disney Plus, some of the live action stuff has suffered. I was on a few weeks ago, really around the back in January at Geekscape, as I did the What If special. I love What If. I think What If is amazing.
It's amazing.
And
Stefan Frank is coming to the show.
Yeah. Oh, then we are going to talk to them. And we also and I've actually liked a lot of the live action. I love She-Hulk. I love a lot of the live action stuff. I'm so pumped for Daredevil Born Again. And like when I start seeing Frank Castle come back in the MCU, I get excited. But this people who were throwing dirt on the grave of the MCU, why did you count out the X-Men? Why did you ever count out the X-Men? And you got it in the Super Bowl trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine. He is Deadpool is the Marvel Jesus. He's resurrecting the whole thing. And I think Marvel's going to have a really good year, not just financially, but I think they're going to start putting out some of their best product, going into ramping up into the Fantastic Four, ramping up into the X-Men live action stuff. And who knows, if we start talking multiverse, and I'm not tired of multiverse. The multiverse is comics, and you don't get comics without multiverses. So we got to chill on the whole I'm tired of the multiverse thing. It's comics. You're going to get multiverses. So, I mean, how much of the multiverse, how much of the animated stuff isn't going to cross over in some form inform the live action stuff when we start to see it. It's clearly done that over in Spider-Man. You clearly see the effects and the successes from things like Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse starting to be reflected, and actually acknowledge the entire history of the live action stuff over there at Sony. So this stuff is just a fresh shot in the arm. It's been a damn good 2024 so far for Marvel, and as a fan, I'm so stoked. And
and I'm just thrilled to finally get like a real strong representation of Cyclops, because growing up as like the only Cyclops fan, like back
he's Marvel versus Capcom Cyclops.
Yeah,
he's using it like a tactician. He's using his powers to like move around the battlefield.
Yeah, it's just been so satisfying as a longtime Cyclops fan. It's like everyone's finally starting to catch up to what I've been saying all along. It's pretty great. But yeah, it just shows how much care and attention they put into that whole cast. It's just been so good so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
It's the best writing in Marvel. I mean, there's been some amazing writing in Marvel. This stuff is just every week. Like I watched today's episode, and they're putting 2 storylines in an episode now, and they're dovetailing really well. And it reminds me of Love and Thunder when Taika Waititi did that 4th Thor movie. And think what you will about how much that was packed with jokes or had tone issues or pacing issues, whatever. I love that they dovetailed the Jane Foster cancer storyline with the villain there, and how the ending was kind of poetic, how love defeated this necro sword that was able to kill gods. I thought that was a really beautiful ending, and I thought it was really smart that they put them together. So taking 2 classic stories, like that's the example, taking 2 classic stories and putting them together so that they can comment on each other, they're doing a really great job of that stuff. And speaking of television, Josh, you played the game. Like, you're watching this Fallout show, aren't you?
I still need to catch up on it, but I've heard plenty of good things.
Dude, I did not play the Fallout game, but again, Heidi and I are sitting there trying to figure out what to watch. And I was like, well, some friends worked on this show back in New York, and it's based on a video game I've never played. I'm sure you played the game. I know that Derek is a huge fan of Fallout. I know a lot about Fallout just from Geekscape, but I put this show on. It's awesome. It is going to make so many people pick up this game series. And it starts in the vault, which is like, no, it doesn't. It starts in like an alternate 1950s, 60s Los Angeles. And we're in the midst of a nuclear, in a Cold War, like who's going to drop the bomb first. And you're at a kid's birthday party and you see Los Angeles in the background, and and you're like, okay, you're starting to hear the radio or the TV in the living room, and the mom's like, why don't you turn that off and concentrate on the party? This is the opening scene. And the kids don't want to hear that stuff, and so the husband, the kid, they turn off the TV or they turn off the radio because it's talking about who's going to strike first, the nuclear weapons, like that. And the whole time you're having these kids watch like a cowboy, an ex-TV cowboy on a horse, and you're just seeing in several shots Los Angeles in the background and the skyline, and you're like, oh boy, I think I know what's, Judgment Day is coming, like in T2. And sure enough, that's the opening, is when you start to see the bombs drop in Los Angeles and the different skyline start to go up into atom bombs. And so it's really well written. And then you fast forward and you're in the vault. You're in Vault 33, and there's going to be a wedding with one of the citizens of Vault 32. In the vaults, you learn very quickly and efficiently how they're separate from each other, have different resources, and trade with each other, mainly in like resources and in marriage. And there's going to be a wedding between two vaults, and for the perpetuation of mankind, right? Because now everybody's been devastated. And I'm not going to spoil it, because Geekscape, if you haven't seen the Fallout series on Amazon, it's really well done. But pretty quickly, your characters are forced to go to the surface, and then there's two other storylines waiting for you in there. And it's wacky and it's crazy, and you start to see three separate characters very quickly from the pilot come together, and their storylines, they bounce off each other in good ways and in bad ways. Sometimes they're at each other's necks, but the scale of this show is awesome. And I've bthink told there's no volume stages in this. Like, how we were talking about, like, in the Star Wars stuff on Disney, you see the volume stage. I think Marvel really loves the volume stage. That's the stage where everything is basically like an LED screen, and it's real time. When you watch Fallout, when you see the size of the vaults, when you see the size of the nuclear fallout stuff on the surface, like there's an entire Western town. Those are practical stages. Those are interior practical stages, and it blows my mind because this show has crazy scale. Recommended to both you guys. I'm not familiar with the game, again, only vaguely, but the show is awesome. Josh, you're gonna.
That's refreshing to know too, because that like practical sets like that are fewer and fewer these days. So I know a lot of what I've read has me really excited about it. I know that the people behind it were really kind of passionate about being true and being like doing the game justice. Because I know, like, for example, like it was a big controversy when Halo Season 1 came out, and when the Witcher show came out, where the showrunners are pretty much like, we never played the game and we don't care. We're
like Henry Cavill is the person keeping their feet to the fire. Like, hey, you got to do it this way. As a fan of Witcher, like Henry Cavill, I think, was the person who was trying to make it as loyal as possible to the source material. Credit to you, Henry.
Right, for sure. And like,
I hear Halo Season 2 is good.
Like, I've heard
people are really enjoying it. Yeah.
I just feel like I would need to watch Season 1 first, and I don't know if I want to. Like, I watched 2 episodes and dropped it pretty quick.
Yeah,
but like Fallout seems to have went in the complete opposite direction. And just everything that you're saying, everything I've heard fans of the games who've watched it have said, like, it sounds like it's kind of like in a way it's like its own thing, but it interweaves a lot of the storylines and plot lines from the games into it, so it feels like a kind of like a cohesive universe that manages to both be its own creative vision while also paying homage and respect to the source material, which to me is really the best way to do an adaptation like this.
We got to try and get some of these people to the Comic-Con Revolution 2025. We got to do this. We got to
listen. Walter Goggins is unbelievable in pretty much everything he does.
Dude,
I mean, did you guys watch
Billy
Justified?
Bible Thumper. Justified's amazing.
Right. So
and then Righteous Gemstones.
Right. Someone like that, though, and when he buys in and he's gonna, be someone who's pivotal, and he helps sell it. I don't know if he played the game in the past, if he had a love for the IP and really want to do it. But when a guy like that delivers, or we mentioned it before, when Pedro came in and delivered in The Last of Us as Joel, it's like these games become popular. And why did video game movies for so long suck? Because the people who were making them were like, oh, we're going to use the character, but we have our own wonderful idea. Yeah, no, that's not why the game sold 30 million copies and has players, playing it continuously over and over. And when, I haven't fully gotten started on it yet either, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. And I didn't actually love the game, but, I just didn't, enjoy playing it compared to other things. But
Sure.
the stories, what went into it, the creative, the backstories, everything else, it weaves a wonderful world. And that's also why people love comics. You talked about the multiverse and stuff like that. Like when you weave this world and it's so intricate and there's so many levels to it, it's like it's easy to fall in love with.
Yeah, if there's one mistake that the Fallout shows made Geekscape, it's not in the production. It's maybe in the releasing all the episodes at once. When you the Fallout has released every episode at once. I've only seen the first two. I'm pacing myself because I love that X-Men 97 has become a water cooler show. I love that for a week we get to have a shared trauma in some cases, or a shared celebration, or a shared like, holy crap, that was so cool how they took that old storyline and they adapted it. And I think that having a weekly wait, I think it's for the better. And I think we're learning that it's for the better because the shows are starting to really be celebrated. And so if there's one thing that I think Fallout you should do when you watch Fallout is pace yourself, chill a little bit, mix it up with some other shows, read some comics, play some video games, go watch a movie. I saw this so Heidi and I have been kind of alternating every couple of days between Fallout and the remake of Shogun. And Shogun is like a show from the late 70s Geekscape. This is one of the very first miniseries back in the day. It really started the miniseries. And we don't have the Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno. We don't have V. We don't have $6 Million Man. We don't really have that stuff the way we had it without the original Shogun from the 70s based on the book, because it was the first big multi-night event show on TV. And it was like record breaking. And now, and first off, for you comic book fans, if you enjoyed the Chris Claremont, Frank Miller Wolverine from the mid 80s, when Wolverine got his very first series by himself, it's just an adaptation of Shogun with Wolverine in it, modernized. But now there's a new version of Shogun on Hulu, and it's brutal. It is awesome. It's a ship. It's it's a stranded navigator on a ship he's British, but the Dutch want to make inroads into Japan. I think in the 1600s, it's maybe 1700s, but 1600s, because Portugal has made itself rich in a trade by being the only ones who found Japan and established a relationship with Japan. So while the Catholics over in Portugal have developed this seafaring, relationship with Japan, the rest of the world is sitting there getting like jealous of it. And finally, the crown over there, the Dutch crown, says, hey, let's hire these British sailors to go out there and just start taking it. And so you have a bit of a privateer. He's a navigator and he's the main character. And when you first meet them, they're lost in a fog, and they're stranded. They're all starving. There's no hope. But he finds white sand. He's like, we're close to land. We can't see through this dense fog. Meanwhile, in Japan, their ruler has just died, leaving the throne to an 8-year-old heir. But he has made 5 of the different groups, fiefdoms, agree that none of them are going to go for the crown. They're going to protect this 8-year-old kid until he's of age to become the leader of Japan. They're not all agreeing to that. They're starting to backstab each other, and they're starting to try and force the other ones out so that they can take the rule of Japan for themselves. And you have one of them who's the most honorable one, but he's also the weakest one, and he needs this Dutch privateer, this British navigator in what's on that ship, which is a bunch of weapons. He needs that relationship in the same way that the privateer and this stranded foreigner needs this this ruler, this marginalized ruler, in order to not get killed by the other 4 people vying for the throne. It's so well made. I compare it to Game of Thrones because it's kind of, there's a lot of storylines going on. There are a lot of characters who are like, wait, who's that? Remember early on in Game of Thrones, you almost needed like a graph to figure out who everybody was and remember who they were. It is brutal. In the original 70s, and the other way I compare it to Game of Thrones is in the original 70s one, the big scene that got people talking was there's a humiliation scene where they're like, oh, you foreign dog, and they pee on him. And that made it to network television, was a big deal. That scene is in the pilot, but there's also a scene where they're trying to find out if these guys are pirates. If they're pirates, they're going to kill them. And they take one of the British sailors, maybe he's one of the Dutch characters, they boil him alive. They start lighting a fire under a giant pot in the middle of town. And you're watching this and you're like, and Heidi immediately, like we're watching this and she's like, what's happening? And she hates fire. Fire is her nightmare. And I was like, just don't look. And then they take this guy and you see the boiling water inside the pot and they start taking him like they're going to dip him in. And I was like, oh shit, this is going to get hardcore. And they don't kill him right away. And it just cuts to all the different villagers listening to him scream to establish how bad some of these bad guys are. And you don't really see him boiling alive as much as you see the agony of the people who are having to witness this as he screams over hours. You see the sun go down, and then there's some like frames of his skin coming off his like, and it's like, holy like it is a hardcore scene. So Geekscape is, in my comparison, I think to Game of Thrones is apt. You are going to want to make sure you remember who the characters are because there's lots of them and there's a lot of different pieces moving in each episode, and you want to be able to keep track of it. You may want to be able to, you might have to read a guide every week, but also the level of violence is Game of Thrones level. You're going to see some people burned alive, similarly to Game of Thrones. You're going to see some people cut up. You're going to see some people die. If you like that stuff, you got to watch the Shogun on Hulu. It's awesome. And also do it just to break up the Fallout. You guys getting that? What do you think? Josh, you going to watch this?
That's another show I've heard nothing but good things about, and now it's easier to watch too with the Disney Plus merger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can watch Hulu on Disney Plus. Drew's gonna watch it, and we're gonna talk about it at Comic-Con Revolution Ontario.
I'm gonna have so many questions because I struggled with season 1 of Game of Thrones. You know, you blink for a minute, you're like, what did I miss? And then
these all look like British guys. Yeah,
I mean,
who are these people?
Season 1 was tough. I mean, well worth it. You fought through it, and you were totally rewarded. That's what I got to do. Now, this was, so you were talking about the 80s one.
The 70s one, yeah. It's like Richard Burton and something like that, yeah.
No, Richard Chamberlain.
I just looked at
him because he was like a big icon back then.
Hell yeah.
Miniseries. But it's based on a book, too, I guess.
It was a book from like 72, 73, 74. Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize it was the same situation as that.
Same situation. They're readapting it as a miniseries, and I just remember, obviously, my first interaction with this story is when it was loosely adapted by Claremont and Frank Miller as that Wolverine miniseries, the first spinoff from the X-Men books. Like they gave Wolverine this miniseries where he goes to Japan, and it was loosely adapted again as the Wolverine movie where he goes to Japan and fights Silver Samurai, and it's an okay movie, but holy crap, did I actually want the Chris Claremont Frank Miller version, because the cover was a Frank Miller piece of artwork with Logan without a mask in his golden brown outfit, and he just has ninja arrows sticking out of him, and he's holding a sword. There's swords in him, ninja swords in him, and you're like, holy crap, Wolverine versus ninjas. And as a kid, I was like, I'm reading that right now. And it was awesome. You know, you got to watch.
Claremont's been a guest of ours multiple times. We try not to bring back too many people multiple times, but Chris's popularity is unprecedented. I mean, not that he doesn't deserve the accolades and the love.
Yeah.
I mean, that man could sit at a table the minute the show opens to the minute the show closes with a line that will be nonstop. 2 days. If the convention was 10 days, it'd be the same thing. Mm-hmm. And he talks to every single fan. They all get their time. He signs all their books, whatever they bring. But to what you're talking about, I mean, the man can just tell a tale. So
And you Geekscapists who are getting into like, I think with the X-Men 97 started a conversation with people about the X-Men being all woke and this and that. And then there are people online who are saying, no, that was always part of the book, going back to the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff. And I do agree with you. It is a population that is feared and hunted and hated for how they are different. That is definitely baked into the idea. But Chris Claremont is the creator who started really pushing that gas pedal down and revving it up and saying, we're going to tell the story of the X-Men. It will be it will be about minorities in a lot of ways. And he started really trying to kind of turning Magneto and because Magneto was just trying to steal nukes in that first X-Men series. And Chris Claremont's the one that's like, oh, let's actually start shading these like a Malcolm X and a Martin Luther King and those, coexistence versus non-coexistence ways. So Geekscape I do credit you guys for throwing that out on social media and being like, oh, but I love Stan. I was friends with Stan. I was his moderator, but I'm going to give credit to Chris Claremont for really pushing a lot of the politics in there. God loves, man kills, like that. All that stuff was huge. X-Men stuff is awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they also they touched on that a lot in the X-Men first class movies. Obviously they went a little astray towards the end, but the first and second one, they really got into that, and that alternate history stuff, and when they dropped that Magneto didn't kill Kennedy, he was trying to curve the bullet to save him. Yeah, like I said, that real world stuff and the way the characters are developed, I don't know if I'd classify it as, the full on, awokeness, but like, again, just the way it was weaved in and it's believable and it makes sense. And it's, like I said, you got to give credit to these guys for what they do with these tales. So.
Well, Geekscape, you don't know who you're going to meet at Comic-Con Revolution, and Chris Claremont could have been one of them the past couple of years. I know that when our own Christian Blatt came back, I was like, oh, I just moderated a panel with Chris Claremont. I have never felt such jealousy in my entire life. I wanted to correct that mistake, so I will be in Ontario this year, May 18th and 19th. And you can go to ccrtix.com. That's ccrtix.com for tickets. One last thing, because I know Josh loved the Godzilla -1. You loved that, didn't you, Josh?
Godzilla's just been knocking it out of the park lately. It's been awesome.
It's been awesome. So you, of course, went and saw this Kong Godzilla, didn't you? Kong X Godzilla.
Actually, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my God! And you're a wrestling fan? Oh my God, dude!
And it's been a busy couple weeks for wrestling fans.
Oh my, yeah.
Couple of things going on, yeah.
Yeah, right. My entire freaking feed was WrestleMania for like too long for my taste. No, I'm kidding. I love it, but dude. I took Heidi because I tricked her with -1 and she went and she loved it. And she's seen all the MonsterVerse movies from Legendary. So I take her to see Godzilla and King Kong. It is not -1. Is it awesome? Yes. I walked out of that movie and was like, Adam Wingard, he made this movie, this Hidden Kingdom, whatever it is. This movie gives 0 F's about being good. In that way, this movie is awesome. This movie is it just doesn't care, Josh. This movie doesn't care if you're going to get the same.
Half the time trying to set up the human plots and stuff.
No.
Like American Godzillas, it's just like
they do not care.
Like an hour and a half of the movie.
No, if anything, it opens in like King Kong from the last Godzilla King Kong is now like living in that like underworld kind of area with the jungle, and like he's there's a bunch of monsters and stuff down there, and he's like hunting different monsters, but he's sad because he's alone and he has a toothache, and they truly try and give him like a human sadness in that King Kong like looks out on the horizon and he calls out and he beats his chest and then nobody answers, and he like sits down sad and he bites down on this monster that he just hunted and killed. And he bites down on it, and he gets hurt, and you realize he's like a bad tooth. And then you have the humans up on Earth, and they're like, Kong is sad. And then you see them bring this giant piece of machinery in to give him a metal tooth to like pull his tooth and give him a new tooth. Like, it's so ridiculous, and they don't care, and they're just gonna go with it. And it's so unapologetic. This is the movie.
So what do Kong and Godzilla team up to fight against tooth decay? What's happening here?
So what happens is you then find out that like from the earlier scene, they've now opened up like a fissure in that underworld that has now a deeper kingdom where there are these Kongs, these bad Kongs, you know, and they're controlled by this. I think it's like a crystal or something. I don't know. And that one's evil, and that Kong down there who looks like he's like, I'm gonna come to the surface. I'm taking all of it. We're gonna rise. You know, there's like a, you know, you got to get down. You got to take the humans. The humans got to go down there. And they gotta like look on like the ancient like walls of like, you know, by firelight, and they gotta see like the different like hieroglyphs and be like, oh, there's an army of Kongs. Oh, this is science. It's such history. It's whatever. It's so silly. But every time a monster fights in this movie, or the humans jump into a ship and start flying around, there's rock music playing. It does not care. It feels like a wrestling intro. Anytime a fight breaks out, it's basically a wrestling intro with music playing. They're going to start slugging each other. Kong gets injured and bit by something. I don't know what happens. It breaks his hand or something. So they take a piece of machinery and they make him a power glove, this metal power glove. You see it right here in the graphic if you're watching this on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. And then they're like, Kong isn't strong enough to defeat this army of Kongs by itself. We need help. Godzilla. Then they gotta lure Godzilla into this fight. And I'm not gonna spoil, man. There's not the only kaiju in this thing, man. You gotta go see the Kong X Godzilla. This is okay. Don't expect it in the Oscars next year. All right. We've had a good run with the Godzillas winning the Oscars. This probably won't be. All right. Geekscape is gonna put money down right now. The Godzilla X Kong Hidden Kingdom, whatever it is, isn't going to be at the Oscars next year. You've had your Godzilla at the Oscars. Okay, you're gonna have to wait again. But is it in my Oscars? Hell yeah, this movie is tight as hell. I watched it. I didn't go see Killers of the Flower Moon. I didn't see. I mean, love you guys. Didn't see it. I didn't go see some of the other Oscar movies. Did I go see Kong Godzilla, Hidden Fortress Kingdom of Terror, or whatever it was, like opening weekend? Hell yeah, I did. I watched it.
The way you describe it sounds less like a Godzilla movie, and I don't know if either of you remember that King of the Monsters arcade.
Oh, it's Rampage as a movie.
Yeah, and it was like a straight up like wrestling game where it was like the power lines in the electric towers.
They're picking each other up they're picking each other up, and they're dropping each other on the pyramids like they're tables at WrestleMania. They're sitting, or they're picking each other up with the tails. They're flopping. Dude, this movie. Again, all respect to Adam Wingard, all respect to Legendary. You know that we had the Legendary, you know, but picking a Legendary, a couple episodes, we had Chris Black, who sure runs Monarch over on Apple TV. Like, I love Chris. Chris, you're a mentor, you're a friend. I love Chris. But this is the Legendary Monsterverse, and this movie rocks. It is ridiculous. It is nothing but pro wrestling silliness the entire time. And if the humans interrupt it, only for a few minutes, enough to like look at cave walls and be like, oh, this is all foretold. It's like, get out of here, just move on to the next monster you're gonna eat. It's so much fun. Heidi and I walked out of there and we were like, yeah, that was amazing, but not for the reasons that you're gonna see at the Oscars, but for the reasons you watch Geekscape. For sure, this is a Geekscape movie. So I'm excited to meet King Kong and Godzilla next year at Comic-Con Revolution in Ontario.
Well, I want to put my tickets in to get, you know, I want to be at the Geekscape Oscars because I would be happy to present. I'm not going to host, but I'd be happy to present, you know, best performance by a giant ape in a power glove, you know, whatever the category is. But like I said, I'd love to be part of that. That's an award show.
That's my award show.
When I saw that trailer, I'm like, is he wearing a mech glove? Mm-hmm. I was like, huh. A, how did they build it? And B, were they like, Kong, put it on? Or did he just know?
I don't want to spoil it for you, but know that when they got to the teeth extraction scene, and that's like within the first 15 minutes of the movie, when they get to the giant King Kong, like they bring in it's like they're building a Manhattan skyscraper, and they bring in this thing with the sole purpose with a, you know, it's a helicopter, it flies around, and it can, you know, but it's all when I saw that thing, I was like, they're doing all this just to pull a giant gorilla's teeth. Like somebody invented this giant I mean, it's like ridiculous. So of course, later on, they're going to be just as ridiculous when they build him a power glove so he can go and punch another lizard or another monster or something. And like, this movie rules. It ain't
I
gonna
have
go
no
to the
idea if the
Oscars.
movie actually addresses this or not, but I'm wondering if they just happen to have a giant King Kong sized glove laying around, or if they were able to just build one really quick.
I'm not gonna spoil that movie here, okay? Josh, I've told you to see it, okay? And if I do not have your review on my Geekscape desk by Monday, you're out of here, pal. Dynamic resolutions will have resolved. You got that? It'll be
All
over.
right.
I'm canceling you guys off the network. There'll be no
I'll keep that in
Comic-Con
mind.
Revolution for you or anybody else.
Well, don't take it away
Josh.
from the people, man.
No,
right.
Josh, you can go to Comic-Con Revolution. I'm not banning you from Comic-Con Revolution.
Josh,
all right.
come and
I'll pay double,
cosplay. No, just come and cosplay. He won't recognize.
Kong Power Glove cosplay.
Yeah.
Right.
If you see a giant lizard, just punch it. Geekscape is. Let's wrap this up. Visit Comic-Con Revolution May 18th, 19th. If you're here in Southern California, all right, drive down from San Francisco. All right, I mean, come in from Phoenix. It doesn't matter. Ontario Convention Center. You can find out more information and get tickets at ccrtix.com. It's up on the screen if you're watching this. If not, Geekscape is. I'll put it in the show notes on the podcatcher you're listening to this to. That's a great sentence, Jonathan. How long have you been doing this? And of course, where can you find out more information online, Drew, to follow you, follow Comic-Con Revolution? What are the socials over there for you guys?
Well, everything is on the site. But if you go to comicconrevolution.com, there's /Ontario, but all the links for our Facebook and our Instagram and our Twitter are on there. And those are always the best places to get immediate updates. You can also, it gives you the opportunity to join our mailing list when you go to the site. The newsletters go out. Again, if you're looking to be the first in the know, those are definitely the spots.
Okay. And Josh is Inu Joshua, like Inuyasha. Inu Joshua on socials. You can also find him on the Dynamic Resolution show here on the Geekscape Network. Search your podcatchers for that one. And if he does come in cosplay with a power glove, I'm going to get my own Paul London to come in one of those inflatable Godzilla suits. And they're going to fight right there at Comic-Con Revolution. So I'll invite
I might have a panel room for that.
Yeah.
But
Let's do it.
we're gonna have to work that out in advance.
You just get a bunch of cardboard cities around there and just have Josh and Paul go to town. And
we'll get some kids in there. They could just like step on the kids and stuff like that. Yeah, whatever.
Whoa, hey.
I mean, that's why they get in free with a one-paid ticket.
Yeah, you might get stepped on by Godzilla.
They're cannon fodder for a Godzilla Kong fight.
Geekscape is, you know what to do with us. You find us on all the socials. Just search for Geekscape, you'll find us. We got tons of shows, but this show right here, if you enjoyed our episode, share it with your friends. It really helps us out. There's been some awesome reviews. Thank you for writing out reviews on the podcatchers. Those really help our visibility, and it helps if we have visibility, we get people like Drew and other guests to come on Geekscape because it works, and they say, hey, you're moving the needle for whatever I'm promoting. A Geekscapist came up to me and said, I found out about you on Geekscape. That really helps us, Geekscapists. So leave a review, share it with your friends, and do all that stuff. Of course, find us on socials. Till next week, don't hate, create, and all that. All right, Geekscapists, peace, my friends.